Welcome to Community Roundtable. They call me Ferdinand, the bringer of balance, leader of many disciplines, and one of your hosts of Community Roundtable. I'm here with my co-host, Ra Thriver, and we got one of the big homies in the building. What's going on, Jared? How you doing, brother? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Blessed. I'm blessed. I'm blessed. My trade is neuromuscular body work. I am a pro boxer that has retired, and I moved on to the realm of teaching and coaching and training young men, young women to be more confident, and that is the mission I'm on so far.
I appreciate that, brother. It's beautiful to have a guest in the building, somebody with your breadth of experience. And we were just talking about breath
Yeah.
a couple minutes ago. We'll touch on that a little bit more. Today, we're in episode 16, and we're going to be touching on the polarized master. We're going to be retouching a little bit the 7 hermetic principles, but we're going to be focused on how to polarize ourselves to rise above that pendulum swing. What's going on, Rob? What you got?
Man, I just seen that title, and that's an amazing title, the Polarized Master. So, absolutely, if you guys tuned into last episodes or the 2 episodes we did, definitely tune in because we definitely, was able to chop up some major game. Shout out to Ferdinand. Some of the stuff that we were saying was really unexpected, not even knowing that we was gonna, kind of dive deep like that. But that's what happens when you're just in the spirit. But yeah, man, the polarization and what we were talking about before, and it was teaching us principle upon principle, and within what we were learning, it was showing us how to use principle against principle and even principle with principle to escape other principles. And it was just so prolific to me when they kept describing about being able to avoid a condition or a current condition by using the law of polarization and then mind neutralization, because we understand these words are important because we're dealing with frequencies, we're dealing with vibrations, and we know that these frequencies and vibrations are the very fabric of the things that we experience. So us as wise alchemists, once again, even if you're listening to this, I don't assume that you are part of the others. I'll just say I assume that you're someone who don't want to just know knowledge just to know it, but know it and to turn it into some form of practicality, to provide ease of life, whatever that may mean to you. So I just wanted us to come back here with 2 people that I deem very respect worthy to chop up this type of content, and 2 people that is a conduit, because we understand God is not a God of one, but God is the God of many. So when 2 or more collectively get together to discuss anything in God's name, which God ultimately is the truth of all truth. Shout out to my friend that he says to bring up balance, which is to bring up truth, because balance is truth. Ferdinand. So when I get to connect with like-minded, yes, it's at times important to have contrast, which Ferdinand has been having a lot of contrast on his page, which constrictions allows for growth. And I asked him, even though I knew why he was doing it, and he said, for growth, because it is when you challenge, you allow the conduit for growth. But at times you have to be in a stream to where there's minimum challenge and more flow, because that also polarity wise allows for growth. So these are my 2 brethren that I'm allowed to do that with. And yeah, I just want us to go over kind of the principles that we was talking about with polarization. And even if Ferdinand, you starting and reading off the definition, once again, let's just create the foundation, the proper foundation for the word. And if you could pull up the definition of polarized, and then from there, we can kind of understand what it means to be more of the polarized master.
Facts. Yeah, pulling it up for you.
That's a great title too, by the way, brother. So you set the stage on even further what we're discussing, and if we want, I guess, just to get further clarity, we could break down master as well.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm getting it up here right now. Let's see.
What I'm saying? Before we build, we gotta lay the foundation, right? We gotta lay the terms of the contracts.
Facts. So there we go. Polarize. Restrict the vibrations of a transverse wave, especially light, wholly or partially to one direction. And then our second definition is cause, to something, to acquire polarity. When I think about polarity and I think about polarizing, Polarity, obviously, I'm thinking about the radio, radio stations. And we talked about this either on our last episode or the episode before that. But polarizing, it's a little different, right? And it says here to restrict the vibrations of wholly or partially to one direction. Well, I wonder how many dimensions that's working in. I wonder how many realms that's working in. When we're operating it. And I'm more so talking about, I'm not even necessarily talking about from a philosophical standpoint at this point. I'm talking about like, what are we doing on a consistent basis when we are polarizing ourselves? Now, few of us do this purposefully, but I would say everyone does this at certain points in their life, possibly for survival or for something that they really, really want, bad, deep core. Maybe it's the woman of their dreams they've always wanted. It's the opportunity for $1 million. Maybe it's a really good job that they wanted or whatever, right? But there's certain things that was going on with inside of them that, let's say that because of this desire as their fuel, they were able to finally polarize themselves. What do y'all got on that?
Listen, man, just to add some relish onto this, restricting the vibrations of, right? And okay, transverse wave, especially light. So just to add to that, we know that we are beings of light. So this is specifically talking about us. Sure. You know what I mean? And then when it says wholly or partially in one direction. So polarization to me automatically suggests that there is a separation that has to occur. So when we're understanding of the laws of polarity, and when what is asking us to, when we want to escape the pendulum swing, we have to polarize oneself, which is mean wholly or partially separate ourselves from the swing somehow. You know what I mean? So when I see polarize, right, and the last episode we talked about how it explicitly told us that it's in the polarization, and then that neutralizes.
Right.
Neutralize.
Raise the vibration.
Right. So that first part restricts. So we mean when they tell us to be the polarized man, that does say that there's going to be some separation, some remnant, set apart from others, which is fine because this is the nature of the universe, is to constrict and contrast, right? But if you don't use this consciously, that means now you're subjected to the natural polarization of the seasons that we talked about in there. We talked about the cycle, or to me, seasons, reason, man's looking for reason, R-E, you're a lover of words too. Repeat, R-E, and then eason is just seasons. He's a repeater of seasons, which is a secular or cylinder recursive living. You know what I mean? That's the reason within itself. Absolutely. But when we understand the law of polarization and that the pendulum is the essence of life, we can set ourselves apart in different parts of the pendulum by polarizing our minds, which is to wholly or partially move into one direction, which means at some level we have to have a base or a foundation on what we're being partial to, what we're being wholly removed to, which is typically your current situation of senses. So just to take it a little bit, on top of what you said, that's kind of what this is meaning to me when the book is suggesting that we polarize our mind. And then I'll pass it below to my brother Jared to give his three-peat on.
Yep, I was really imagining in when Ferdinand mentioned like when you getting with a girl, and then we put on our best dress, we move away from things that we think that she might not like, and we adhere to an image that is more of astute and more to what we imagine that she would go for, and just more about, I think polarization just makes me think about you're becoming, but what are you like moving away from? What characteristics are you trying to like offload and not vibrate with any longer. So
yes, good stuff.
Appreciate that, brother.
yeah.
You know, when I think of the polarized master, I think of the duck. Yeah, water just rolls right off the back, right? I think about the master that just observes. You know, like think about the power of that. You know, think about the tranquility of that, the harmony and the peace that a person would have, the level that they would have to be at to just observe. They're not really a part of anything. They're just here and they're just observing. It's hard. That's really hard to do, to not get entangled
Yep.
in all these different things, right? And it requires this polarization of that rise in one direction. I mean, it might be in other directions as well, but I'm thinking that there's a rise in vibration that creates levitation, right? So now we're out of the way of the pendulum.
And that's the most important part. You know, I think, you know, we could just spend a second just describing when it talks about the pendulum, because we know this is a lot of this stuff is allegory and is metaphorically. And Jared, just to, you know, catch you up real quick, you know, last week it was talking about how to use the polarization of one's mind, because the law of rhythm states that there's a pendulum. You know, there's a consistent, non-mutable pendulum that swings back and forth, and we cannot not wish it into existence because it doesn't exist. But the fact that we know it can exist, we can coincidentally put us in certain places where we know, you know, the pendulum may or may not swing. So yeah, so just to bring it back to the brothers real quick, Ferdinand. Yeah, sometimes looking at you guys' faces gives me energy, and I forget my face when I see my face, ironically. But but
I be seeing them tweak every time I turn the screen.
Yeah, it's just like, oh man, it's me. But yeah, so you know that pendulum swing, right, which is the law of rhythm, you know, because it's good to make these associations and provide ourselves with enough different, which the law of rhythm is just, I guess, because we have the law of the principle of vibration. The law of rhythm is what speed that thing, because remember, they're all connected, even though they're independent. Somehow the 7 hermetics are all connected to at the same time, which each one describing the other. So when we understand the law of rhythm, we're basically just identifying a particular frequency of rate of speed that a situation, event, person, whatever is vibrating towards. And then through the polarized mastery, since we're able to identify, because remember, we need the ego. Just the ego is identified with things that we don't prefer, but we need the ego because the ego allows for the polarization to even happen, which we can't polarize, as Jared talked about before, till we can form an image. You're trying to impress the girl. We already had this idea that we want to polarize ourselves, even from how she met us. You might have met her at the mall. She saw one version of yourself, but you're going to meet her again. Now you're going to polarize it, even create more separation between. So it's that same idea, but unless we can analyze and look and see and then pin a label, that's different, then these two things are also different for me. You know what I mean? We won't even be able to know. As Ferdinand, you said, which direction is our higher or our lower of polarization. You know what I mean? So this is why we're even discussing it, because this is mastery. This is us doing our own etymology on our own previous words and not leaving it, because we understand. Shout out to you, Ferdinand, for reading that simulacrum. We know that we don't need any new ideas to create a new pattern. We just need to investigate what has already been. And somehow through this investigation, it creates a new pattern. You know what I mean? So that's why I just wanted to double talk, even for my own edification, because I realized that God is a level of, paradoxically, self, but community. And you have to have a balance, Ferdinand, of both, which is the truth. We identify balance and truth as one, to really bring out the truth of it. So I need you guys. Yes, sometimes I know Jared knows I hit and runs, but I always tell him I wouldn't be able to even hit this if it wasn't for the co-opetition. That's how I have an ego, but my ego knows this is part of something that's bigger, because then I would be able to do it, pause, when I'm by myself or when it's just me on camera. But somehow when it's just me, I can do it, but it's not at the same level when it becomes collective. So I say all that to say this is why I wanted to bring you guys on, because I know there's going to be sauce that can only be even revealed to me. I'm trying to take notes. I'm like, I gotta talk to my brothers because source won't let me just do this work alone. You know what I mean? It's requiring a collaboration of minds so that we can get to the true source on what it really means. Shout out to you, Ferdinand. Like I said, you see that? The Polarized Master. That's a great series. We can do 3 or 4 more episodes on what it means to be the Polarized Master. Sure. We laid that a foundation. We defined it because this is now levels of practicality, but source uses commune, you know what I mean, in order to get some of these ideas out. So
when 2 or 3 are gathered in like energy.
And Jared, look, Ferdinand sent me, he said something about like, you know, the masters must really have you on this thing. But he don't even know because we're in different time zones. He sent it to me at 111. And I was like, indeed. Yeah. They're like double talk on it, double build on it. So look, now just even during this conversation, now we extracted the Polarized Master. So now that we're laying down a foundation on what that means. And that means someone who can see what is separates oneself, but in a level of mastery to where he's not just saying, oh no, I don't like it. He's using law against law or principles against law. That's why I said this is what we're talking about. It's not just for a random. This is for the real alchemists out here. So therefore we can talk plain. Go ahead, my brother.
Let me jump in. So you know, when everybody out here, everybody in the world has an understanding of polarization, right? Because we all talk about it. When we got people in our lives who are acting like they ain't got no sense, we'll have people around us who'll be like, yo, don't go down to their level. They can't get you. You can't get in trouble, or you can't this, or you can't unless you go down to their level, right? So what does that mean? That means that we might already be in this polarized state.
Yeah.
And most of us might not even know it. Well, there's levels to this, right?
Yeah.
And Jared, we're talking about the polarized master that might be up in the Tibetan mountains or on this podcast, or you know, right? But like I said, there's levels to this.
Yeah,
up and down, right? So we got polarized masters everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Pookie standing on the corner, you know,
he's a polarization.
He is a polarized master at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
He's feeding his family. He's not in prison somehow, right? With the things that he's doing on that corner, right? And he hasn't killed anybody,
right?
Him and his homies haven't beat anybody to a bloody pulp. He's finding ways to make sure that they can kind of exist the way that they like, with the peace that they believe peace is, right? And they're trying not to come down,
right,
from their polarized state.
Yeah. I think when I hear the word master, it reminds me of a client I was training. He was a UFC fighter, and he kind of posed the question to me, and as I posed it to other people after he gave me this knowledge, it would seem that mastery is about acquiring all the skills, and you show up in maybe all facets or many different. If we're speaking about boxing, you got the speed, you got the power, you got the footwork. But what he was pretty much saying is true mastery is that offloading, is the simplicity, is that, you know, singularity of mind, and just really we think about bringing more on and having more skill and acquiring more, but it's really like the offloading of the things that you don't need that kind of dilute your mastery.
Yeah, that's a great example. I'm about to say definitely this might well complete it and bring up the mastery definition, you know, just to give them a full foundation of it. But absolutely, Jared, you know, I told you I had a monk. I have a monk friend. I met him through a language app. He's really a monk. And one thing he always just regurgitates is that less is more. Less is more. And I think that when you reach comprehensive knowledge of a skill in a subject or accomplishment, proficiency, ability, capability, knowledge, understanding. So domination, ascendancy, supremacy, superiority, control. And who would not want to have control over polarization, which is essentially control or knowledge or ability or proficiency of one's own mind, you know, and one's own triggers, you know. And that's one story of, you know, the story of Job will show us is that this reality, and even when we're reading the Communion, it talks about that there are causalities out of different planes of effects that humans can even see. So even to us, that should not be, but there are so many different cause and effects. If we allow ourselves to be continuously conditioned by the externalization of our reality, and we allow that to be the main polarization of it, instead of the ones in our minds, then we're basically asking ourselves to be able to be swayed back and forth of the scene, while knowing, yes, when you become a master, you understand cause and effect, but the Kabbalion already told us there's levels and planes of causality outside of even the highest of minds. So then if you're only expecting yourself to be polarized based off the expectation that things should function good or things should function well, you are not taking into the account what happens even when you have been doing everything right. What happens when you have been doing all your minds, all your prayers, all your meditation, and something bad still happens? So since you still have this definition that all things must be in polarity, one experience, which is good, you are denying and being delusional to the effects that in order for life to be truthful, it has to give you a balance of both. This is why I love the idea of a spiritual stoicist, you know, which he doesn't want to control the external in such a way that it only has to appear in one way for him to be satisfied, but he has surrendered before the external events, or more fatigue, the love of one's fate. And we know love, God is love. They gave us a real good description on what love was in Corinthians, which I'll say, instead of saving us the whole thing, we'll say love is just means unconditional, which means that the love of fate is to say, no matter the condition life is presenting to me, I am choosing to not self-identify with it, which is separation, which is opposite of love. Because if unconditioned is love, that means joining yourself with other things is the truest expression of love. And denying or polarization of a said thing is actually separation, which is the opposite of love. And if there is a God, they tell us God is love, which means God is just unconditional acceptance of one's fate. I think this is why I love Stoicism, that I did learn that at a certain point, because it gave me a certain understanding that allowed me to relinquish that life should present itself to me a certain way. And then I just decided to move to a beat of my own drum internally, independent. And Jared, you know me, I decided to move to a different beat, even if life is throwing its most heinous at me. I refuse to allow I feel like that's surrender, to allow me to bend to it. Now, if I want to get in a dark emotion because I want to, that's fine. But how dare I let life trigger that in me? You know what I mean? Yeah, how dare I let life? That's like my vendetta, that I have this vendetta. If there was a conscious God, that nothing you can do can hurt me. Like David Goggins, you can't hurt me. And I pride myself on being in certain situations and then allowing myself to choose to feel how I want to feel, despite what the reality should say, which I guess is a polarization, unconscious. But it's all about this show. How do we bring the unconscious things that we do? Even Jared, you're a fighter, so there had to be some level of, you couldn't be, oh, he's just like me, and no, I'm better than him. And polarization in mid-fight, we talked about this. Poles swing between who's better in the fight and not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that's an interesting concept when and who's going to take the reins and control the fight more. It reminds me of one of the fights I had when I was in the nationals as an amateur, and I didn't know how to fight left-handed fighters. And so the first round I was getting cooked, and to the point I was seeing stars. Like, only if I can get to that next round. And the next round I did better. I saw his left hand. I was able to make some adjustments, and then I was taught by my coach, was an Irish guy, and he was telling me about mantras, and I didn't take the time to cultivate one, but he told me his favorite mantra was, "I'm ready, he's going down." And in the third round, going into the last round, third round, I knew I needed something to bring me through. And then that year they introduced points, transparency with points in between rounds. So he was up like first round 7-3. Second round, he was up 12-8. And third round, after he won the third round, he was gonna go. He was gonna win. And in that third round, and in between the rounds, I said, I'm ready, he's going down. I'm ready, he's going down. I just kept repeating it to myself. Third round, I come out. He's almost doing like what the Olympians do and start to run. Like he's up on points. He doesn't have to even engage. So I'm running after him, almost like trying to get those shots. And he does this thing where he's going to my left, and I do like a gazelle leaping left hook. And in the amateurs, we have this headgear on, and you're protected. It has the cheek protection, has the eye protection, and I do this leaping left hook, and then we separate again, and then the referee says stop. He sends me over to my corner. I don't know what's going on. He sends him over to the doctor. Doctor lifts up the headgear. He sees a cut and waves it off. So I won by TKO, and I knew that was only because I took my words and directed that energy towards what I needed in the moment, and that was the outcome.
Man, that's a perfect. Go ahead, Ferdinand.
I really appreciate this example. Thanks for giving me the floor, Rob. I really appreciate this example that you just gave, Jared, because I like to take it and apply it to the military, right? So I did 14 years in the Army, and everybody in the Army's got to go through basic training. Well, for most people, that's a very challenging number of weeks. However many weeks that it is now, I think it was like 9 weeks or something like that when I went through. Well, I remember a point in basic training where I was like, listen, nah, I'm winning in this. I think I was having problems with the nuclear biological suit that we have to wear for nuclear biological attacks, right? And, we have like a certain order. You got to put that on. You got to put the mask on. I mean, everything, right? Gas mask. You got to clear it. You got all kinds of stuff, right? And you're getting tested. You got to do this within like a certain amount of seconds. And, I wanted to be good at it, right? I wanted to be effective and efficient. I wanted to be better than the guys next to me, right? So all of this is kind of working together to help me say, this is the only result I'm accepting. It was almost like I had purposely put my back up against the wall and said, there's an enemy in front of me. I've got to win. I don't have no other choice. There's a lion right there. And not only am I not going to let this lion eat me, I need dinner tonight. So the lion's got to go, right? This in its own way, in my opinion, creates the polarization. Maybe not necessarily purposeful, because I didn't understand polarity
Right
at that time of my life. But I do think that a lot of these spiritual things that you and I would talk about, we naturally do these things when emotions get very heavy, in whatever direction that the emotions go. They're a major activator, and we even see this in movies. Right? So if we're watching like some X-Men origin movies or whatever, and the X-Men character hasn't properly developed their power yet, their power usually comes out when they're in love, angry, or frustrated.
Yeah, I mean, once again, and listen to you guys' story. Once again, this is all about being a polarized master. I'm like reverse engineering polarization, because what you guys are describing is polarization. But whether you know it or not, you're describing the events and how polarization usually happens. You know what I mean? Because there is an adversity or something, whatever there. And you have to, this is why I'm saying the ego is healthy, because in a sense of health, competition is healthy, because competition a lot of times can be the provocator that allows you to want to polarize yourself separate from it, but you have to be able to bear witness to where you are, and you have to be witness to use whatever fuel, even if you can't get your mind there, but saying, I don't want to be like these, I'm about to say the N word, I don't want to be like these dudes. You know what I mean? And that can be enough to polarize. But what did it start with? It started with the sensation. Then the sensation is coupled with the word, which we know the word was made flesh through us. And it is. We even understand through what we were reading in there that the law of rhythm, that is basically the law of emotion. So there is a component to all of these things that creates manifestation. This is why I wanted to do this thing, so that we can bring the things that are in the dark that you guys are describing in parts of the recess of the unconscious mind. We know the unconscious mind become conscious the moment you think on it. So you guys are thinking on different parts of your unconscious, bringing it to the forelight. I'm perceiving it as reverse engineering polarization, because you guys are absolutely describing polarization. And now it's bringing it down to how it was practically used to you unconscious. Now we can reverse engineer and consciously, practically use it, which was my reason for having this, to take the abstract that we talk about and figure out how to apply it to practicality, which we're all ending to, how to be the polarized master who understands the relationship between his reality, the way he feels about it, and his ability to see it different. You know what I mean?
I actually got a quick story, if y'all interested, on my journey of polarization. And Raw, you and I, we kind of touched it before, but I haven't really I don't think I went too deep on it. But I'll give it real quick, right? So I was going through some things at the beginning of my marriage. You know, first time in my life I had been in a relationship like this, you know, that was as serious as it is. And I'm being a father, being a husband at the same time, but trying to be a soldier at the same time. It's just not working, right? So I go ahead and I let go of the military. But I didn't realize the damage that I had created by identifying as a combat photographer, right? As a combat journalist. You know, when I talk to people, you know, they ask me what I do for a living. I say I am a, you know, combat journalist, right? I am a public affairs practitioner. I am a, you know, newspaper editor or whatever. You know, I did a lot of different jobs in the military and media. Anyway, point is, I went through a major depression because of identity crisis. You know, you do one of the most rarest jobs in the world. You never really think there's going to be a day where you're not going to do it anymore. So going through that, I had to sit down one day while I was just sulking and figure out who I was. Right, this is like 8 years ago. I'm going through this, and in that process, I figure it out. But I tell myself, I'm like, listen, I know I've accepted second. I'm not doing that anymore. Right. So the polarization for me, and I would say really for everyone, started with thought. You know, started with deep core thought, understanding who I am, and then saying, all right, well, what do you want now? You know, what are you going for now? What are you going after? What are you going to focus on? What is purpose? What is destiny? Right. And then choosing a way forward that would give me the power and the ability and the people around me that can help me get along that path. Right. So it aligned me with 6 things that I'm always talking about. Right. There they go right there. The 6 keys of life: nutrition, water, sunlight, exercise, sleep, and goals. Well, I started that journey with fasting. Okay. And then I went from fasting to detoxification. But I let go of everything. I let go of all symbols, all of them. Right. I was a practicing Christian prior to that. Let it go completely. I let go of every single religious type of stronghold. And in the process of letting go of music, letting go of religion, letting go of people that weren't serving, food that wasn't nutritionally dense, drinks that had color in them. If I didn't juice them myself, I wouldn't drink them. Right. This is a good long period of time. I mean, I've drank some stuff lately, but back then it was probably like a good 6 months to a year where none of that. Every day driving the car, go places, no music at all. I wasn't allowing any suggestions in that I considered toxic. Right. And a year or two after that, I was walking down Cary Street in Richmond, Virginia, and my whole body felt like it was on fire. Right? Like Goku in Dragon Ball Z. Probably lasted for 15 to 30 seconds, 60 seconds. I don't know. I don't even remember exactly how long that it was. I just remember that after it was over, I had the magic glasses on that Dick Gregory talks about.
Mm.
But I attribute that to a certain level of polarization as a result of understanding who I am.
And when you're talking too, is it's also neutralization, that which I don't even think that polarization can happen with some level of neutralization. But, and once again, just to make it practical, because at times I guess all of us have certain realities that we have, and we're trying to figure out ways on how to actually change these realities. So once again, just listening to Ferdinand's story, I can't help but reverse engineer some of the things that he was doing. One of the things, starting with the words, starting with the feeling, and then he did a level of neutralization. If you guys was on the show last week when we talked about that, to where he created a separation or wedge, or between him and certain things, which then thus neutralize their effect. And then this creates a new frequency. So this is where the law of it started with the thought at at mind, and it goes all the way down to the rhythm. And these are the things on how they kind of manifest when we are dealing with the laws. And this is why it is important to understand them all within totality, because even understanding masculine and feminine energy, gender, and knowing that there does come a time where a man must go out and be external, but there comes a time where he has to harness that feminine energy, which the feminine energy is a more restful energy. And another thing he said, he had to know ourselves. And the thing about it is that when ourselves tell us who we are, we don't believe it, because we want other people to define itself for us. You know what I mean? If you sit with yourself and be quiet, your desires of what's contained inside of you is going to show itself. Now, whether you want to deny it because it doesn't line up to Roz, or it doesn't line up to Ferdinand, or it doesn't line up to Jared, or whoever it is that you listen to, you can't deny that these things are coming from within you. And it's know thyself, and the kingdom is within inside of you. And once again, if we watching the throne and the kingdom inside of you, does the emperor has on clothes? Like, who's occupying this throne? So how can you go in within, you hear the words of the throne, and then you don't accept those to be that thyself? Whether thyself was, I want to start a business, I want to talk to this girl, I want to start a family, I want to start, you know what I mean? Because there's many desires within self that we are all avoiding and not honoring. And then we don't understand that it's the radical acceptance of these desires which leads to the level of freedom that Ferdinand was said, which leads for transformation. But you didn't have to do anything but to accept what was already there. You know what I mean? And just through the acceptance of what was already there creates a different frequency for then you was accepting things and being more concerned about things that wasn't already there. You was so busy on worrying on adding to. You took inventory of what was there. You didn't like it, so I need to add to and add to. And even in the Bible clearly tells us, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and the things that we want to add to will be added to. And it told us as well where the kingdom of God is. So where's the kingdom, there has to be a throne. And I just invite us to ask us, who do we think that is sitting on the throne? Even if we don't want to acknowledge that the kingdom is within inside, even if we don't want to acknowledge that there is something that is a divine spark, that is a truer essence of you, doesn't mean that these things are empirically true. You know what I mean? And then once again, I just add this. Think of the polarization that it creates in man when man recognizes the God within himself. Because to recognize something is to create polarization. This is why the law is immutable, because we can't polarize and not be in existence. You know what I mean? In any form. So just think about when you do lay your eyes, because whatever we lay our eyes on creates polarization. So imagine when you do lay your eyes on that throne, on that kingdom that is within inside of you, and you acknowledge this divine spark. And just the acknowledge and bringing it to your awareness creates a polarization, which is a frequency within inside of you. You know what I mean? And as you looking upon you without having a prerequisite for it to look anything other than what is currently there, which is your desires. That's you. All the voices that speak inside of you is you. And it's in the acceptance and knowing these are the voices that's inside of me that allows them to be something different, And then once again, just by bringing stuff into our awareness, we're bringing into our inventory. Whatever we lay our eyes upon, we're creating polarization. So instead of being afraid to open that closet and to look upon these things, or as soon as you place your eyes upon these emotions, you meet them with negative, you neutralize them, like Ferdinand said. What if you just was the observer, now you're allowing, because you're still going to polarize, no matter if you're hating it, loving it, neutralize. You can't escape the laws of polarity. We can't escape being a polarized master, even if we don't consciously accept it, like how we're trying to do here. But just know, when you are bearing witness to your own self without pretense, without judgment, without prejudice, you are polarizing a frequency within inside of self, which, if it feels like you, it feels like peace, or we might call it grace. It's a certain peace or quietness or vibration that this observation of self without judgment produces, which you then thus entangle with, to even when you untangle, you never fully become untangled as if you were before you knew you could even perceive yourself in this way. You know what I mean?
And what you just said, I'm so sorry to cut you off, but what you just said,
brother.
this is literally how I help people deal with disease. We deal with the perspective on regress trauma exactly how you just described. You gotta be a fly on the wall in that memory. Well, if you a fly on the wall, you don't want to get smacked. So what are you gonna do? You're gonna sit still and be quiet. Now you're gonna be able to see it for what it really is. Once that perspective is changed on that regress trauma, healing takes place. But I'm sorry, brother, you got the floor.
No, but then it just goes back, because once again, at the core, this is what the spirit was revealing to me earlier, and I told this to Ace that's on the comments. At the core of the abyss, it just becomes recursive. It finds a new way to say the same thing. You know what I mean? It finds a new way to show you that these 7 principles are immutable and they're always at play, whether it's pronounced to us or not pronounced to us. And if we take a second to observe reality without the mask of the persona of the identity, which is also an emotion, and observe is just an observer, you'll be able to see how these things are stringing together and how they are at all times, these laws, whether we're conscious or not, being played. And that does then creates a polarization, which then, when you're viewing your current self, your current situation, you're choosing to view it outside of certain energies. That means that you're creating a new relationship to them. And guess what? Even when you're viewing it from that state of neutralization as the polarized master, that pendulum is still swinging. But what's happening is that you set yourself outside. You set yourself outside of the swinging of the pendulum, which is basically the reason why I've even wanted to have this call, because when we were reading it last week, I knew that there was much more that we needed to dig up out of that to really grasp what the book was trying to tell us about how these hermetic principle plays, and how being the polarized master is really the true aspiring thing that the initiate wants to do. And it's not just, right, yes, you neutralize it when you look at yourself from a different self without emotion, but then you consecrate it when you look at a new self with emotion that is polarized from the self that you had no emotion about, because it is the feeling that is the secret, the rhythm that actually helps collapse that vibration into a particular polarized frequency that is then experienced within the flesh through the principle of gender. You see how we can't not talk about all principles when you're talking about creation.
I feel like Jared has got something burning. What's up, man?
It's come up and it's gone back down, but no, I know that at one of the points that Ra was mentioning was about the separation several minutes ago, but I was always that put in my mind. It reminded me of when I didn't read the whole book, when I just picked up Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth, and he was just speaking about the falsehood of the separation. Separation never happened. And as I was understanding as I was downloading that understanding, the next paragraph, the next page talked about just looking at things in reality. This goes back to what Ferdinand was saying about being the observer, but not only being the observer, but almost looking at it in a mystifying way of, oh, I don't know what that is. Not putting a label on it. And by not putting a label on it, it becomes, it becomes, I don't know the word to put
neutralized.
On it. Yeah, it comes neutralized. Like you just don't know what it is. It almost becomes it's a powerful way to exist, because it's not the mind running for words and things to say and things when you don't have to say anything at all. You could just observe and kind of be in that negative space.
There's a female, I don't know her name, but there's a video on YouTube. I highly recommend everybody out there go watch it. The title of the video is called The Law of the More. I guarantee you the information in that video, you want to know it, right? But one of the things that she says in that video, as she gives away lawful information, very valuable information, she teaches people how to speak in a courtroom to get a very specific result. And one of the things that she says is very, very similar to what you just said. She said, listen, you got to understand the power of silence.
Mm. Yeah.
Mm. And what is and what is silence? I think silence and like the spirit of neutralization are kind of one and the same, because we know that frequency wise, nothing can really be silent. Even when the Kabbalion tells, even when things are at rest, they're not resting. And things that appear emotion are at rest, something that we're going to talk about Monday, the grand paradox. So, silence to me is what we've been discussing, is to be able to look at self without hearing evil, speaking evil, or saying evil, complete absence of sound, quietness, stillness, tranquility. Yes. So neutralization, I think, would be definitely a proper word that we can conflate with each other when it comes to Kabbalion, when it's said to enter into a state of neutralization, which is silence, quietness, tranquility. So if your tranquility muzzle, censor, which means that you're not able to judge it, you're not able to be heard, your opinions don't matter here. And when we get into this state, once again, we always have to understand whether we want to call the polarized master, et cetera, by definition, there is really no center balance. We're always polarized against something. You know what I mean? We're always polarized against something. So if you look at how noisy life can be, just embodying the polarization of that, which we understand when you polarize, it means to be wholly or partially set apart, would deduce that is silence, or deduce that is neutralization. So once again, this is just about practicality. And even when, we was reading the 7 principles last week, Ferdinand, I kept telling you, it's like, man, these words in the beginning was the words sound like man, you know what I mean? And the Bible tells us that, word was made flesh. So I think that man might be the container, but I think we might be more words than anything, since we're seen to be so affected by words, past, future, and present. And it's in the neutralization, or not being so obsessed about what these words are so-called labeled, or what they should be labeled, that we're able actually to see the truth of reality. And shout out to Ferdinand, because he said I call him the bringer of truth, the bringer of balance, but it's one and the same. And the truth of the reality is that reality is more unconditional than anything. And we're kind of in the polarity of reality. And I'm not trying to say that's bad, because obviously we can't help our nature. As so-called humans, we're half divine and we're half human. So we ping pong in polarity of divinity, stillness, and humanness. But when we understand that, when they say God is love, right, unconditional, the only thing that I kind of see in God's creation as unconditional is reality within itself. You know what I mean? So we can relinquish trying to project qualities onto God that man has, and allow man to isolate himself in polarity and keep that for ourselves, and redefine what God is, when God is more just of an unconditional existence of everything. And if there was a God, he's hid himself in man, and the wills and desires that we think we have are really coming from us, which we can then thus self-sustain within our own self, without the need for a mediator between our own thoughts. We can mediate our own thoughts, because we do. Even listen to this, somehow we have the capacity to still react as a slave, or we have the power to also neutralize. So if man was just one form, man would just be one form. How do we have the ability to look upon ourselves and feel all these multitude of ways about self? What is that self that moves amongst selves? What is that quality?
Man, when I listening to everything you're saying, like a channel came in, right? And I'm thinking about how when when I'm polarizing myself, it kind of goes back to what you were saying a little earlier about the stillness and the quiet. And that's what happens. Like I literally get still, I get quiet. But as I achieve that, and it's very similar to like, if I had a 5 gallon bucket of water with a top on it and it has some dirt in the water, right? So all it is, you're driving down the street, the truck is shaking and all of this, right? So now the dirt is everywhere in the water, but you let the water sit still. You put the bucket down on the ground, you let it sit still for about 20 minutes, and you take that top off, and the water looks clear until you see down at the bottom, right? But that's because the silt and all the dirt had a chance to filter down. As that happens in my mind, right? That exact same process, as that happens in my mind in this still process, what I've noticed is my awareness goes through the roof.
Mm.
And see, the reason why the awareness going through the roof part is so important, I want to be very clear with all of our listeners out there. Thank y'all very much for tuning in. Um, the reason why the awareness is so important is because that's one of the first steps before you start to solve a problem, right? You got to be aware that there is something that's off, something that might need to be changed or fixed or altered or elevated. And in that space, now we say, okay, well, I see that this needs to change. Well, all right, what's my options for changing it? What's my options for doing something about this? All right, I could read a book. I could watch about 50 YouTube videos. I could call up a master. They're probably gonna charge about $500. I got all these different options, right? But the awareness put us in a position to know that we have these options because we finally were aware that there was something that needed a change, right? And then from there, we use whichever of the options that we use, but now we go back and we reflect after we got our results, and we see if it worked or if it didn't work, right? This is the development of wisdom. And and this is part of how we get the master in the polarized master. I want to be very clear to everybody who's out there, and my brothers, my brothers on the podcast, they may have a different perspective on this, which is cool, right? But this is my perspective, that the master is someone who continually goes through this process again and again and again and again. And the primary amount of times that they go through this process is about things that they can alter and elevate within their own character.
Yeah, because if there's no pendulum, to hit you, you know what I mean, you can't be a master. So the master is the one who can be hit by the pendulum and sets himself apart to not get hit again. So that's when reality just becomes reflective and recursive. Right? Well, am I lying? That's what I'm saying.
No, you're right on point, man.
Yeah.
I was thinking about root tribes when you said that.
Yeah. So it's like it becomes hilarious because then you understand somehow the way in the end and the beginning, they're all tied where none of them can jump each other. They're all needed. So it's either you're starting a journey, ending one, or in the middle of another. So, we don't have to ask for anything different, because once again, this is why I just surrender in the process. Because we understand, even if it's outside of our knowing, there is an order. There is a divine order that is happening. And it's not a particular order that we had to work or we had to earn. It's something more that is just who we are. And as Ferdinand said, and even once again, what is awareness? So when people are looking for this divinity, I'm saying, do you not see your processing? Do you not see that you have the ability to bear witness to something as if you're the only individual going through it, and then reflect upon that perspective from another? Whose perspective are you taking? Do you just take for granted? Is that the same you that went through it? Einstein said you can't solve a problem, same mind that got you into it. So how immediately did you get yourself into a problem? You have another part of you who can then assess, you know what I mean? And when Jesus was trying to tell us that there is a multiple beings that form one, we couldn't understand it, even though we use it every day, and I don't think, maybe there are some humans, some sociopaths that able to do things without reflection. But I think most of us, are the proof of this thing that they describe as God, because we're experiencing reality in one way, then we have other checks and balances at the same time that's running different awareness patterns and simulations. And what I'm saying is that it's so familiar to us, we don't realize this is a power that can be consciously grasped, controlled, and then projected in other ways. We're already using it. We're already polarized masters, Ferdinand was saying, but we are the unconscious Ferdinand masters, polarized masters, who we're
NLP,
trying to neuro-linguistic programming.
Yeah, go, man. Listen, this is the time, man. Bring him on in, man. Bring him in.
And then awareness, once again, awareness, consciousness, recognition, realization. So this is why awareness is power, because you're under the subjection of that pendulum swing. If you can't even be aware that you're hitting a pendulum, you know what I mean? So this is where even for those of us who are still on the path, the fact, if you can name your demons, remember, even in the Bible, you couldn't cast out demons unless you knew the demons by name. You know what I mean? So when you have that moment of self-reflection, you don't understand that that is the divine aspect of you. Man is the maker of the mistakes, but he has a divine aspect that can look upon his mistakes damn near instantaneously. You know what I mean? And it's in the awareness that a so-called mistake or misshape was made, that the contrast can only be born. So this is how man, when he starts to know the truth, he frees himself. You know what I mean? It's not that he reaches a level that he only experiences polarity in a contrasted way, which is all good, which is they're trying to sell us that there's a heaven, that there's a place beyond this place of truth, which is balance, which gives us an equal measure of both. And
it's
that
on the other side of the ice wall, bro.
Soon we'll hit the other side of the ice wall, right? And when we hit the side of
the earth,
right? And they're trying to tell us, we in Genesis, we were in a state of polarity, which was perfection, which was absent of darkness, which was not balanced. We purposely ate from the tree to become fuller gods, which is the knowing of both, you know what I mean, of good and evil, which created the poles, you know what I mean? So what I'm basically saying is that when you become the so-called polarized master, you free yourself of even thinking that the capacity or limitation of humanity is somehow perverted, is somehow subjugated under external evil force, and is something that has to be eradicated. Humanity is something that has to be fulfilled. We're still trying to be from animals to humans, which humans, once again, Christ gave us a great definition of the works that we can actually make when we become whole, you know what I mean? When we become fully who we are, which is who we are already. Yeah, man, that I kind of lost my train, but basically just to say what we've been saying, you know, that the polarized master, what I want you guys to understand is that we need adversity. We need shortcomings. These aren't things that are bad. These are fulfillment of scripture, because we can't usher in good unless so-called bad is bear witness to. It's some weird law that this plane is existing on. And in order for a polarization to be occurred, this is why us to get to this level, we had to get thrown into the darkness. We had to get thrown into the depression, into the constriction, to the restriction, because it was something in us that knew that it wanted to give birth to a polarity, but it had to be dragged. I mean, Jared talked about this, Bashar talks about this, the rubber band effect. And he talks about in his lectures, the measure of light you can experience is direct proportionate to the amount of darkness that you experience. So therefore, we can say, even if it's outside of our understanding, darkness in these things and the amount of darkness we see on so-called earth is a direct measure to a promise, because darkness cannot, it's seasons. Darkness cannot sustain to this level. If anything, the darker that it gets is revealing with rejoice and hallelujah, alhamdulillah, the amount of light one is and will soon be experienced if the laws of just. Now, if this thing can violate itself and continue to perpetuate itself in one form without secular or changing of seasons, then it obliterates everything that we know, that we understand. But when we understand, even when something reaches its heights, somehow all the energy that it contains disperses and it has to build itself back up again. You know what I mean? So this is what it means to be the polarized man. And my understanding is for us to not just say these fancy words, but really get a good handle, since it appears to be that flesh was something of purpose, intent, and it wasn't to come into flesh, out of flesh, to be a rush to leave flesh again. But flesh was supposed to be something that's supposed to be dominated, completely commandeered, and built into a particular fashion. We can use these laws to perfect our own desires, which we're in battle between to be or not to be. We're in battle realistically, if you guys want to object and say, no, I'm not. But typically it's all these B's that you want. And then you have all the adverse little voices that tell you that you're not. And then this is what we go into the world and battle against, in external mirrors of our own quiet insecurities that are being whispered within self. You know what I mean? So when we allow ourselves to not be burdened by this, which is not something in the future, it's when we decide whatever time we want to drop those bags, then we can be under God's grace, which is free will, which is to move without judgment, persecution, or prejudice, which why the so-called Jesus Christ, we talked about this earlier, Jared, Jesus Christ was the fulfillment, you know what I mean, of scripture, which then rendered man back to his childlike state. In Ferdinand, you have a lot of them things. So we understand to be rendered to a childlike state was considered pure, but are children pure based off actions or innocence? Because kids is bad as hell to me, right? But there's a certain level of blamelessness and shamelessness that children project, which they don't know that things are shameful until an outside force condemns them, creates a boundary in law, and reinforces the free will to be taken away to now I only do things that's aligned within the law, which the Old Testament had us under that jurisdiction, which the New Testament was written inside, not outside. You know what I mean? So it gave us a level of purity to assume a childlike state of free will without fear or persecution of an external law that maintains for us to live in a certain way, which then constricts the child from experiencing as much. And typically what happens to the child, if the child takes on the restrictions and limitations and laws of the parents, you know what I mean? A lot of time we don't never get the full potentiality because the child was taken out of free will. And then now it was subjected to the so-called boundaries, the fears, and the understanding, mostly through shame of the parent, which we understand that God wants us to assume a perfected state through shamelessness. I think, you know what I mean? A protected state through shamelessness that then allows us to freely, because you guys tell me, is it free will if it says, but wait, don't eat from that and don't do that? You know what I mean? Is it free will if you say, well, you can do this and you can't do that? To me, that's not. That's a deterministic. And then once again, if he's saying that you must do one thing and not do not, then now we know polarities. That means you're creating an unbalance now because you're not allowing the truth. You're trying to hide away from a certain part or aspect that exists. If it didn't exist, it would be no need to create a boundary of it. So it's an awareness, and it's saying, no, you can't be whole because we know existence as is whole. I need you to be partial, which the Old Testament God was trying to get you to be. I need you to be righteous. I need you to do all these things. But when you create all these claims of what you need to be, you automatically put in the mind the contrast of what not to be, which then opens the doorway. You know what I mean? So under this new love that we've been given for atonement, we've been given the ability to have free will, which is self-radicalization, self-acceptance of self without condition, which is more like, yes, to some seems like a delusional childlike state, but this is the state that all the ancients have told us about, which we've been confused to think that there are things that we can do to earn a gift. And that's where, and I'll say this, if you come across a teacher and he is budding you to God, he's saying, I see you, but once you do these things, then God will really show himself to you. I will argue the fact that he might have trying to show you a false God. I will argue the fact that if there is this God that embodies this unconditional love, his requirement would be for you to give yourself as is and not at a future date. He wouldn't require you to go clean yourself up before he accepts you. He will require you to come as you are within whatever condition that you were in, and then he will require you to let go of what you've been holding on to, because the love promises unconditional salvation, and that I will remember your sins, aka your AKA sins no more. So I don't know how I fully got on this subject. Kids don't know what's good to some teach. Yes, absolutely. So, but it got on the subject because it's still down to accepting the polarized man. You know what I mean? And to fully neutralize, that means that one must be able to look upon himself and his situation and somehow remove his prejudice towards the situation. You know what I mean?
So I appreciate what you bring in, Ra. You know, you stay cooking. You stay bringing us a perspective that's outside of the proverbial box, which I always appreciate. I do want to ask Jared a question though. Jared, when you think about the polarized master or the polarized man, do you see a certain amount of resistance from people in that person's existence or in society, because maybe they have raised their vibration and maybe they are operating different than others around them?
Yeah, I would say, it just goes back to like change. Who really has adapted to change, and who can accept that new version or the version unseen that is now being shown from an individual. But yeah, I think that there is the contrast of how a person showed up and how they are becoming more master of themselves to be able to create any separation or any whatever is necessary for them in this existence.
And the funny thing,
go ahead. No, go ahead,
the funny thing is like it's the paradox, man, because it's like at one, right, and this is just when you say, because a lot of things what you guys are saying is like reverse engineering in my head for some reason, but it's like and sometimes, at least for me, my spiritual journey, you're trying to separate yourself from it, but then you're also conflicted because you're not trying to feel like you're special, or so that's like the great paradox of being polarized, is that if you can't accept, or if you can't say that I am above, quote unquote, this thing, you can't even fully embody what it means to polarized master, because the polarized master is able to see something what it is, provide these labels, put it into a vibrational box, and then set himself apart from that box without prejudice, and that's when you was talking, Jared, talking about how you have an unseen version of yourself that you're embodying, and we, most of us, receive prejudice or restriction, from the people around us, and then sometimes we might embody a feeling like, oh, I'm trying to say I'm better, I'm trying to say this, but this is where just an intelligent ego has to come into place, because not being confident that you're better is you're better. You know what I mean? One thing I used to say back in the day, like, I'm not trying to say I'm better than them, but I'm better than them. And I used to always say it because like it's double talk. Like I'm better than that, and I have enough love for myself to say that I am that. I am better than that. And this is when I start talking about unconditional, radical acceptance of self, which is God's true nature, because when you do allow yourself to enter into those moments of ego, which we all have to, ego is the experience of reality. You can enter into ego with conviction, because there is no self-condemnation. There is no condemnation, but self-condemnation. You know what I mean? Right. So you can literally and acknowledge your betterness of, because some things, man, and Ferdinand, I want to see your face when I say this, because you mentioned something about this earlier, and you talk about your situation and how you had to have a conviction. Yeah. You know what I mean? So imagine trying to change the situation. You're like, well, I think I'm better than, First say, no, I'm better than that shit.
That brings us right to Neo, and when he's talking to the Oracle, are you think you're the one? No, yeah, you're not.
You're not the one. Yeah, you're not the.
Look at that right there. You see that sign right there? Yeah, learn that phrase.
Yeah.
And why? Because the Oracle was a mirror. This man is coming on shaky, stinky legs. So hell no, you're not the one. Go back. and bring me to one. You know what I mean? And that's as Godfidence. It's not ego. It's not ego because I know law and you don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this is when unconditional love, because you understand unconditional love removes you from shame from yourself and anyone else. So then you're operating more in the spirit of truth when you're not letting the world's temptation to shame you and tell you how you're being you is wrong. Well, Jerry, you shouldn't be that braggadocio. You shouldn't think that far. You're not too good to come out and absolutely, yes, the hell I am. You know what I mean? And this is why I think for the student that we're all becoming, really understanding who God is and what God is needs to come first. Because once you understand that you're radically unconditionally accepted, you can let your ego be balanced and know if me and Ferdinand talked about, if it comes time where it's smoke, I just have to, you know what I mean? It's not a battle ego. It's just, you know, I'm able to meet the conditions of life with the necessary force that it requires shamelessly.
Watch this. Watch this. Hey, God. Yes. You know, I'd really like to win in the things that I'm doing every day. No problem. Just say the word. Okay. Well, I think you know, there should definitely be a couple more millions in my bank account. You know, my wife, she looks amazing. You know, please help her stay that way for the next 30, 40 years. But I want everybody to understand what I'm doing here. Okay. God is within. Okay. So does it really happen exactly like this? Yes. Because if God is within, all you got to do is start talking and you hear God talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that goes back into conversation we were having right before this call where I'm speaking to Ra about this radiating self-love and what the master looks like and what are the exercises, what are the mechanics that you do on a daily basis to get you there.
Yeah, and you know the funny thing is because you know it's when you really start reading the Bible, you start to really understand. This is why it is a magnificent book. You know, because it starts to tell us, you know, that the Word was made flesh. You know what I mean? So we understand that us as so-called flesh beings, when we're speaking the Word of God, we're speaking the words of creation. And then God also told us that the power of life, you know, lies in the tongue. So instead of it's funny, we take the most silliest stories literal. We take like the story of Noah and he fit all the animals in the ark, but the stuff that we should take literal, we're not taking literal. You know what I mean? When you pray, believe that you have it and you will, and all these other things that should be taking exactly how they're taken, but then now we apply all these caveats to it.
Faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. Or honor thy mother and father for thy days to be long upon the earth. Or a number of other ones.
As you say that, it makes me think of when you say the story of the ark, it makes me think of how detailed it is and it actually plays on our imagination, and we can visualize that better than just the words of the principles that we should be taking to heart more.
Yeah, absolutely.
So maybe that's a mechanic that we install to be that more masterful version.
And we got to look at things from a perspective of as above, so below. Right? As below, so above. Well, why? Because we've got to understand the dual nature. We've got to understand the principle of gender and bring it into our use of this polarized mastery. And this is not only possible, and in my opinion, this is the only way to do it. Right? We've got to be able to understand these types of principles. Understanding that dual nature of positive and negative, that dual nature of roots and vegetation, that dual nature of how the battery works, right? All of these pieces come into play to create that polarization.
And then one thing that you said, man, is faith is the evidence of things that are unseen, right? So that's a clear we have clear definitions of love, we have clear definitions of faith, and they teach us to have faith, right? And then it also tells us that faith is, so it tells us have faith, and the Bible describes what faith is. So faith is evidence of the things that are yet unseen, right? Then we're called to call things that are unseen as if they were. So this gives us a real clue to the nature of what man is. Man is an image calling making machine. You know what I mean? And he's called to have faith, which is conscious awareness that he is an image word making machine. You know what I mean?
Imagination.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and then when it tells us that the word was then made flesh, and right, when it tells us that we were made in the image of God, right? And when Ferdinand just said, as above, so below, as above. So it's, to me, clear evidence, right, that the image that we think God is who Ferdinand was just talking to in the mirror, because we see the below, right? And Christ said, if you've seen me, that means you've also saw the one who sent me. Who is the elusive one who sent them? We said that it's the unknown face, it's the Father. But in the Genesis, it describes the face of the Father. You know what I mean? Which it was through man. So it might not directly told us what God looked like, but it told us, we know what the thing that was made in the image of it looks like. And we know if you saw the thing that was made in the image, you also saw the face of the one who sent you. So I can't remember if it was Peter or whoever, but he was talking to Jesus in the New Testament. He said, it's great, all these miracles that you showed us. And he said, but can you showed us all these miracles, but can you show us the Father? And Christ responded back to him and said, you know, have I been with you this whole time, and you're still asking me to show you the Father? And I'm telling you, whoever seen the Son has seen the Father. And then he tells us who are the sons of man. So it's clearly evidently that the persons that's being described over and over and over, as my uncle always said, is not a mystery or a spook God. These scriptures, including the Kabbalion, is showing you how man is asexual. It is a simulacrum. It is something that needed no seed or sperm to create. It creates itself on top of itself somehow, you know what I mean, in a recursive fashion. And also the entirety of man is not just man. Man is his reality in himself, both of them. So that's how you measure. This is why Christ told us, as Ferdinand said, roots, vegetation. We have to think non-dualistic and dualistic to really overstand, leading to Monday, which we're going to talk about, the grand paradox. You know what I mean? To overstand, you have to know that you are, but you ain't, you am, but you're not, and you're both. So not only is man who he self-conceptualized himself to be, the other aspect of man is the externalization of the self-conception, which we understand through reality. You know what I mean? But we cannot separate the both and say that man is this and not and man is that. Somehow man is man, the flesh, and he's his mind. How do you know his mind? It externalizes itself through vision. You know what I mean?
So like in the Moorish Science Temple of America, what the sheiks teach from the divinely prepared words of Noble Ali, the Holy Quran, is that man is spirit, right? And I'm not saying that you're wrong or anything like that. Just more so, just giving another perspective that man is spirit and man has a body, and this is also a perspective that is shared by a couple of mid 20th century professionals like Dr. Joseph Murphy, who wrote The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, and as well as Dr. Maxwell Maltz, or Mr. Maltz,
Cyber. And not sorry to interrupt, but Dr. Joseph Murphy and Neville Goddard had the same teacher, which was Abdullah. They was taught by the same person. You know what I mean? Yeah. So we're not hinting on, and I do agree. So man is spirit, and we understand spirit is mind. This is why I'm telling you, man is the logos. He's more word than he is flesh. So this is why when we're reading the Hermetic principles, when it's describing the principle of mentalism, principle of correspondence and vibrations, rhythm, and so on and so forth, it's describing man's true nature. You know what I mean? This is what and even when you was reading, I said, yo, this is describing me. It's describing my pose and my rhythms and my whole thing. And when you combine these principles, somehow these words create the human experience. It's the strangest story, you know what I mean? But we have to take it at face value that somehow in the beginning was the word. And somehow the concentrated polarization on this 3D plane of the unseen word manifests itself as man. Words. I'm being serious. Somehow words in this realm, when it's concentrated through polarity into a human, and the way the words arrange themselves creates the illusion or delusion of the human experience. You know what I mean? So that's Absolutely. And it perplexes the mind of man, because how do you convince a man that he's nothing but words?
So peep this, right? Words. What we're really talking about is the law of suggestion, right? And then at the same time, when we bring in the law of suggestion and we invite a word like God, well, why would it have so many different meanings to so many different people all around the world? Well, that's got a lot to do with vibrational frequency. That's also got a lot to do with mineral balance. That's also got a lot to do with traditions and morals and ethics and all these different things, right? But what it's got more to do than anything else with is vibrational frequency.
And that can't be denied, because I can't deny the 7 Hermetic principles. And remember, in the book, this is why it told us, when you reconcile these 7, there's not only 7. The principle of truth are only 7. And he who touched these truths, all doors, meaning all understanding of all phenomena known, it flies open. And there is not a phenomena you would not be able to describe within these 7 principles. And I'm just taking it a step further and think the God that we want, we're projecting our humanness. The God that is beyond flesh. It is words and principles, and we are the manifestation of these words and principles. So what we are and what it is not like us. This is why it's unknowable. Only thing that we can know, ironically, is that the laws exist. Where do they exist? Inside of us. You know what I mean? And somehow it makes man's mind fold on top of itself forever and ever. And man's way. Go ahead. And the way man, according to Ferdinand, his frequency controls how, I guess the words we can call it Akashic, whatever the hell is just all that it is in entropy. What entropy just means chaos. Man represents less entropy, which just means control. Somehow the frequency of man introduces a level of control. There's no void that can happen in the universe. So when we create the container, which is man, it is filled within words within a certain arrangement. Each of us has our own signature of arrangement of the words from the infinite. And we are playing out these words in flesh, just like the Bible says.
I'm about to cook right now, right? So pick this, right? When we think about how words are interpreted, which is putting us in positions to be able to achieve this polarized mastery or the lack thereof. We can start looking at the communication model, right? So when we look at the communication model, we've got an encoder, right? That's putting out a message. Then that message has got to travel through noise to get to the other side, and now it can be decoded. You got source encoding a message got to make it through noise. It's got to be interpreted by the other source on the other side, and then now once that happens, there's got to be a response based on the understanding through the noise. Well, what's the noise, right? The noise is what's going on in here. The whole being is the noise. Now, if a person knows themselves and they're living in a space of purity, they're going to be able to easily uncover every piece of what's being communicated in that space. They're not just going to hear the words. and know the definitions of the words and understand the context of putting those words together in sentence, paragraph, as they form. Well, they're also going to understand the tone, pitch, and inflection. They're going to understand the spiritual balance of the person through their communication style, through every piece of what it is that they give in that message, because the noise is dialed down low on that person, right? But the ones where it's kind of dialed up high because maybe too much cinnamon toast crunch, bacon, eggs, and pancakes, every day, no water, too much thumb action, no foot action, no hand action, no movement, right? Not really a lot of sleep. Well, their noise is dialed up real, real high. And what's the noise? It's the vibrational frequencies of fear, guilt, doubt, disbelief, tied heavily to regress trauma, perspective on regress trauma, tied heavily to the things that they're eating, because these are the things that are keeping them emotionally balanced during those trigger moments, right? But at the same time, they're feeding the family that they have inside of them, all those worms and parasites, tweaking the brain, that is tweaking chords. They're playing a violin on the body, right? Tweaking how the mind is choosing decision making that's moving through the nervous system to get everything else moving in the direction that it wants it to go. But all of this is tied back to suggestion and what our belief or knowings are of those suggestions through the noise. And this directly affects the polarized master. So when I had that experience some years ago that I just described a little while ago on this episode, I turned off the suggestions. I didn't want to hear somebody say, "Oh, that's a little extreme what you're doing." It's not extreme at all. It just seems like that because we're so out of balance. Now, I didn't want to hear what Jay-Z had to say. I didn't care what Mama had to say. I didn't want to hear what nobody had to say except for close family and a couple of friends. And I limited those conversations. That way I could make sure the primary suggestions that was going in and out was in here and in here. Well, changing that, just that part. There's so many other parts that need to be changed to really go like this. But just changing those parts activated something really, really special. I could hear better. That voice was talking to me. It was telling me exactly what to do. And next thing you know, I was ready for COVID, the pandemic. There's not many families who could say that. If you talk to my wife, she won't really be able to explain it to you, but she'll let you know. We earned more money during the pandemic. We had food growing in the front yard. We was chilling. I'm not trying to hate on nobody. I'm not trying to be insensitive to any families out there that had any type of loss. Blessings to all families out there. But please understand the benefits, the true wealth benefits to polarizing yourself. By Jade.
And it's just like, man, it's such, because these things are just, once again, I'm interpreting what you're saying. I'm trying to encode your decoded message. But it's just bringing me back to how important we are and the vessel is. And when we're talking about a balance, and you're talking about noise and information, because these things do. The body is the vessel. And when we are out of balance with information and certain things that's going on inside of the body, it is distorting a message of truth. And just to go back to you fellas, just so I catch you fellas' eyes real quick, because when it comes to the body really being unbalanced, the truth is unchanging. This is something that the Bible tells us, right? So the truth of God in his message, even though it might be channeling through us in different ways, because of our levels of purity or so-called non-purity, which is changing the frequency, because the vessel is the vessel and information is going to come through as it is. But according to as we are, we constrict the light that is already within the body. So when you're thinking about noise, once again, let's say like if brain fog, you've been eating high fructose, red 30s and 40s and all these other things. Now it's causing a resonance within the body that's giving you brain fog. The message was consistent from the Akashics. The stream of the logos of the words was already coming through, but the vessel of impurity couldn't properly decode the messages, the resonance. Maybe there's shame, maybe there's all this compression, because these things, depression, compression, shame, insults, guilt, these are things that constricts the body. And so then it constricts the level of energy flow that's able to go through to where you could be staring at situations that can actually save you, but you're under the wrong energetic thing because of Ferdinand keeps talking about is that purity, the message is getting distorted. So it's revealing within itself the fact that we are the vessels, that we're not trying to say purity is the way. Universe is saying that for us. It's letting us know that the message is always unchanging. What is changing is us. What is changing is us deciding to put in opposite frequencies that is opposite frequency that is averse from the base. You know what I mean? Which is creating different sounds that we think that we're hearing other than truth. So it's like when you're saying that, it's really revealing to me the importance. And once again, it's not even about alkalizing the body, because we all know here, people who deal with the body, if the body becomes too alkalized, it actually creates an imbalance. We're so aesthetic, the noise is so much, we have to enter periods of so-called purity to bring the body back into a more harmonious balance. With the body does have a little bit of bad bacteria and stuff that goes in it that creates harmony, but we create a level to where we're so unbalanced. We have to go through these mental and spiritual diets, sometimes for years, just to reach the level of balance so that the message can properly tune through. You know what I mean? So
think about when a person has all these thoughts on a consistent basis about racism, black versus white, niggas and crackers, right? Then they got all these conversations that they're having on a regular basis about getting some pussy. Or it's a female talking about, she talking with her girlfriends about getting some dick and getting paid at the same time, right? But then at the same time, they're having conversations about how they're gonna get the money to pay for their college tuition, or how they're gonna get the money to pay for their rent. Then at the same time, they're talking about how little Ray, their son, just did some crazy stuff and he drew all over the walls with his crayons and stuff like that. She on the phone talking, blah, 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 right? And all these things just racing through a person's mind all the time. And they never really take a break from it for decades. For decades, right?
Decades,
now, at the
crazy.
same time, they eat at least 2-3 times a week. Ben and Jerry's, Briars. Right? At the same time, every day, Starbucks, they got the money. And they get the extra foam on it too. It looks cute when it's done, right? The caramel, little caramel drizzle up there, maybe some powdered sugar, and that joke will be looking good, right? This is every day. At least 5 days a week, Starbucks. This person is going to have a extremely difficult time through life. And I'm going to tell you why. The massive amount of sugar that they have coming in is going to break the blood-brain barrier and bring toxicity into the brain. It's going to equate to things like ADHDs. It's going to equate to things like maybe early onset dementias. It's going to equate to things like ALS. And it could be long before the person turns 60 years old. Well, what is their decision making? What is their use of time like? And now keep in mind everything that I just threw out there, and I'm gonna stop there. I could go much further, but everything I just threw out there happened as a result of suggestion, and it robs the person of their higher abilities of creating this polarized being that can overcome anything. I was watching a video on Instagram just a day or two ago, right? So this guy basically recreates the technology of a bee, right? So when a bee flies, a bee doesn't actually fly. it's like magnetic levitation or something like that, right? And keep in mind, y'all, everybody who's listening, I'm a little ignorant on this subject. I'm gonna just give you what I have to give, okay? But I'm watching this guy fly this I guess you could call it a drone. This is early 1900s. It's a video of it. Now, it doesn't just magnetically levitate; it creates a force field. So as it flies through the environment, nothing can mess with it. It's almost like wind that's blowing. You don't feel the wind. No matter if it's 120 miles an hour wind, you're magnetically flowing with this force field around you, right? This is polarization in other forms or other dimensional realms that we can apply to what we're doing. And how can we do that? I can use the Bible for this, right? For this question. How can we do it? We use Ephesians 6. It tells us right in there how to achieve it, right? How to put that force field around us. It's called the armor of God. But how do you achieve it? You live by very specific principles. Well, what is that? Suggestions and symbols that create physical movement through the nervous system, right? And then creates results in life, things that are built, systems that are used or created or destroyed. Right? I don't want to go too much further.
When you say the nervous system, that reminded me of this this class that I took called Square One, and there's there's an assessment, there's muscle testing, and there's corrections to the body, but it's via the nervous system. And the simple way that the corrections happen is through tapping. And I raised my hand like, why is tapping the correction? There's also a nasal sniff that is part of the correction as well. And I'm asking, why is the nasal sniff? And it's like it was said that the tapping is how the nervous system receives information, new information, and it's kind of like a reset type of approach. And also with the nasal sniff, it's like rearranging the brain from disorganized to more organized through the breath. And I just thought that was powerful, that the nervous system is the kind of like gateway through to messaging and correction, and the mechanics that is almost like a software update.
Absolutely. You know what's really funny? Like, I watched this show called The 100. Great show. So the season 6, I think it is.
What's this, Netflix?
I think it's on Netflix. Really good show, man. I think y'all will like it though. It's called
I saw that.
Right. So season 6, they go to this moon or planet in another galaxy, and when they get there, they realize that the people are body snatchers. Right? They move consciousness from one person to the next brain. Right. Well, usually when this happens, they eradicate the other person as they're putting in the other consciousness, right? Well, for whatever reason, this time, the other person's consciousness still lived while another consciousness was embodied. So now there's a fight that's happening. Well, eventually, the original person who doesn't have control over the body's motor functions anymore, but they're still in the brain, they go and find the real deep, dark secrets in the other person's brain, the other person's consciousness, right? So they go into this memory that's really traumatic, and they do Morse code. So that their friends would notice this out of character behavior from the regular body that they know. Obviously, it's another consciousness that's in control of the body. But friends know that body, but they know that the behavior is off. So now they figured out that whatever it was like a scratch or something, that it created a physical behavior because of tapping on that on that memory.
Yeah, no. When you said tapping, it reminded me of that. Say, because tapping is a form of language. Somehow, the brain and the mind is so amazing. You know, it can create language out of anything. You know what I mean? So that tapping, it definitely creates some sort of, you know, ripple or some sort of understanding, and maybe it does behoove us to understand how Morse code work and how the brain can decipher taps into commands, and they could, maybe you have a certain do, and you might not know your body knows what it means. You know what I mean? But get your shit together. You know what I mean? Or whatever the case is. You know what I mean? Oh, we got programs. So, you know, this is the magnificence on the reason why, you know, I'm such a proponent in taking God out the sky, putting him in man, so we can just explore our own wonders, because we're so busy trying to put man down. Oh, that's man-made. Oh, that's not man. And then hold God to this crazy high esteem that just seems to not allow us to appreciate what we are, you know, as much. This is why when I start going deeper and deeper to the Bible, and I see that the love that God had for humanity, that why we don't have the same love for self. You know what I'm saying? God loved the world so much that he descended into us to be us, to lift us up, in hopes that this would raise us to some sort of nobility that his laws couldn't. He gave flesh of the flesh, blood of the blood. So I'm just moving on side of the polarity master, as moving to the polarity of the acceptance of the human condition, no longer trying to escape my own pendulumistic mindset, and no longer looking at earth and the creation and man and the experience that is as a curse, as or some thing that I've been punished to relive, and look at it as more as a gift. You know, to understand the difference between good and evil, to allow for the infinite. And Ferdinand, I talked about it last time, to see myself in you guys and say, you don't have to look just like me, because I'm many pieces of the one, and I show myself to self in many various forms. You know what I mean? And I can acknowledge that, but still participate in the human experience, which allows me to have an ego and say, yes, we are all, but I'm me, and you, and you're you, and I appreciate yous for being yous and eyes for being eyes. You know what I mean? While still also having that half and half divinity acceptance, that the one has fragmented himself to become many, of self-discovery by community or communing within self, in the sharing of different perspectives of ideas, to see his full self. And for somehow there's no greater purpose than the process that we're experiencing now. You know what I'm saying? There is no greater hope that tomorrow has revealed that this moment now hasn't revealed. And we can use that as our foundation. And then I feel like we can move to a more GTA-listic, meaning video game creator, co-creator, because we demystified the external God that other religious forms has predicated our existence, that takes up, I think if there was a devil, let's rob all these niggas of awareness of searching for a God, so he doesn't get a chance to be human and experience the totality, because we're being human, but we're still under the jurisdiction of fulfilling our mind into flesh the way that we desire, outside of shaming. Go ahead, my brother.
I just want to stop you just for a second to appreciate everything you just said, because that level of growth right now is pivotal, because we got Jupiter going into Cancer in July. Well, Jupiter is the planet of abundance and blessings and expansion, and it rules Cancer, right? Jupiter takes 12 years to get back to Cancer. It's going to be in Cancer for a whole year. Well, that means blessings and abundance and expansion to home, to roots, right? To the ancient bloodlines mindset.
And what I'm saying when I read the Bible, it also means that you did not earn it from the works of your hand. It was written into the stars. You are the bearing witness to the glory and the unconditional of love, that even while I was sinning, he appeared in front of me in the midst of my inadequacy. You know what I mean? And blessed me with knowledge, understanding, and understanding. You know what I'm saying? That I feel like myself, I do not deserve. You know, the human condition is telling me that I'm not worthy, but yet I am still getting blessed and informed. And so this is when you understand our relationship to the divine, and that there is reasons, which is repeating of seasons. And fortunately for us, we are in a season, right? And they always talk about this is the biggest wealth transfer. And yes, because you're going to have a whole bunch of people who are earning resources from things that they did not earn. It's just their frequency alone gifted them, which in the what's it called, the Piscean age, which the Bible just the we're reaching our limit, 2 hours, but you guys have to understand what Ferdinand just said, because the story of the old Abrahamic Mosaic faiths took place in a different age, the Piscean age. You know what I'm saying? Which forced the time.
The Jesus is the Piscean age. Moses is a little further back.
But there was this is basically say that we're in an age now that wasn't when these laws were created. So there was a new covenant established that allows man to not have to work from the sweat of his brow. And this is what Adam was cursed with. If we understand that Adam was cursed with man toiling off sweat of his brow, Eve was cursed with her battle between her and the unseen devil. But there was a story of redemption where we were going to be able to benefit from things that the works of our hands did not give us, which just makes me understand that we're going to be in a transitional phase where mind becomes matter way faster than what it has been previously. You know what I mean?
Peep this, right? Peep this real quick, right?
Yes, sir.
In Revelations, it tells us that, I forgot what chapter, I'll get it for everybody. It tells us that an angel will come with 7 seals, right? Or seven, I believe it's 7 seals.
It is 7. There you go. There you go. And then 7, we're talking about 7 hermetic principles at the same time. You know what I'm saying? Which, and you see Revelations, right? The 144, which they talked about, the angel numbers, that there was going to be an unsealing of it. So we have 7 seals, which the Bible did represent, and a lot of this is allegory. So it's 7 seals, what the Bible did represent, but it said that they was going to be sealed to a particular time, and then only a certain group of people were going to be able to read the seals for what they are, basically break down reality. And those are going to be the ones that even during times of calamity, somehow, since they have been revealed, and Ferdinand, you know I'm cooking, somehow in the last of days, while calamities are happening, those of us who the seal was taken off and we were able to read the 7 seals, we were going to be able to use these seals to shield us away from the ones who cannot interpret. Am I lying, Ferdinand? Does the Bible did not say that? For those of us who could not interpret the seals, they were going to be under a certain rapture or a certain conjecture that the last of time. But those of us who can read the seals, we were sealed. We were sealed, right? And here's another.
It says in Revelations chapter 2, verses 24 through 29. It speaks to the wicked people of Thyatira and those of that land who were living righteous, which were the few. And it tells in those verses that those who are living righteous, I will not impose any other burdens on you, right? And just hold on to what you have until I come back, right? Okay, now keep it in mind, until I come back. And who's coming back, right? The Father, right? Who's the Father? The Father of karma, the Father of the planets, the Lord of karma, Saturn, right? The age of Aquarius, right? But anyway, it also says in that chapter that those who continue to live righteous, not only am I going to not impose any other burdens on you, I'm going to gift you scepters of power over nations and gift you the morning star, right? This is what it says in Revelations 2, 24 through 29. The verses. Anyway.
And this is, and not to take it biblical, but it's all connected because we are in that age now. We're in the age of Aquarius, which is the age of the light scepter, which is the age of enlightenment, right? In which certain things that did not make sense will soon make sense, right? Which one thing that said like didn't make sense was the pendulum swing. For all these years, people were trying to teach these things and still getting smacked. Now the same science in a different age now is uncovered in a different way. So we're using the 7 hermetic principles to circumvent, which Ferdinand, when we first talked, he talked about the age of Aquarius and the Gemini and what's to be expected. But those of us who know how to work with principles can then thus, and you know about this, Jared, because Bashar talks about this. They talk about is there going to be they asked Bashar, is there going to be internment camps and FEMA camps? He said for some there will, for some there won't. Yeah. And they're trying to, their minds is being boggled. Like, how can two realities be? You know what I mean? Because there are certain people that the reality is going to happen. Go ahead.
No, I saw a video online last week where it showed the Palisades being burnt, and then this one chick, she's outside videoing all around the house. She's like, I'm in the Palisades, nothing's happening, and two things are happening at the same time.
Just like during slavery, all Black people weren't enslaved. You know what I mean? So we have to understand is that when we embrace our divine self, we can see how there will be certain conditions that the world will go through, but somehow, allegedly, somehow, you or your family loved ones will not be affected. But the 7 principles is telling us how. There is pendulums, there are seasons. And yes, we can't stop the seasons, but the individual initiate can set himself apart and watch from afar what a world might be afflicted to, but somehow his world is not. And I think in our own way, we're all currently doing that regardless. You know what I'm saying? There's people that's tormented that Donald Trump won over Kamala and they're crying. That's their whole world. They're devastated. You know what I mean? That's a world. Right. We're not a part of that world. Therefore, we're not constricted or restricted to the pendulum swings that sways. So the law, one thing we have to always understand, even when we're trying to teach about higher law, the higher law is also defining the current laws because we can't escape it. So we're all living the 7 principles, whether we understand the relationship to our realities or not. So there are always pendulums that we're circumventing because our current polarization puts us out of the grasp of that pendulum. We just want to take conscious control, as Ferdinand titled this, as polarized masters, to be able to, one, study itself so we can see where past pendulums have swung, and then use that data to then create a new mental mind construct and polarize ourselves to that, so that then we can then circumvent the polarity that seems that's going to be happening over the next 5 to 6 or 7 years. You know what I mean? And then we can reconcile it because we can say, how can I not be going through that? But how can the world be going through that? Because we know what we'll talk about Monday is the fulfillment of the grand paradox. It is and it isn't. The truth is all but half truths. And unfortunately, they aren't privy, or maybe they were privy to the information. They didn't receive it. They received it not. So they wasn't able to use the principles in the polarities of the master to circumvent a real condition, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? But we can reconcile it with. Go ahead, my brother.
Oh, I'm sorry, man. I keep cutting you off.
No. You cooking, honest. You adding too. You good.
Anyone out there? I see we got some viewers still with us. Appreciate you. Anyone out there who wants to achieve polarized mastery at high levels, learn the zodiac. One of the things that we talked about in the podcast tonight was it about as above, so below, so above, as above, as below, so above, right? It's part of what we talked about. Understanding that relationship of that statement in its connection to the zodiac and you. And the more you understand that, now what you've done is you've harnessed the power of time. You've harnessed the power of cycles, of understanding how cycles move in this realm of our universe. Because understand, when we look at the Milky Way, this realm is very, very, very small. And the Milky Way is very, very, very small in relationship to many other galaxies throughout the universe, right? So just understanding this realm as above, so below, and that's the zodiac. And you, that's the zodiac in that flower outside. That's the zodiac in our education system. That's the zodiac in our days of the week, right? Understanding that will give you a certain type of ability to polarize at a greater degree. right? Because when we're talking about polarity, there's an infinite amount of polarized degrees. You can go as far as you want, right? It just depends on what you're willing to put in to achieve this, right? Because what we know in physics, it's a basic equation: energy in equals energy out. What you put in is what you're going to get back. And we're talking about the principle of rhythm at this point, because as high as the pendulum swings, is how low it's going to go. It's going to go as low as it goes high, just like an EKG machine with the heartbeat.
And just to kind of wrap up this episode to lead into the next episode, we talk about the paradox. Last episode, Ferdinand showed a grid of what happened over the finances, like over the past 100 years, and the naked eye, right, is so perfected. Every line is perfected, right? So, and that's true, right? And somehow you can look at the truth and see how the truth works, but still understand that there's a paradoxical to the truth, which meaning that even though that this is the pattern, somehow you on an individual level can escape what should be. You can escape a pattern. You know what I mean? So even though the pattern says that we might experience a session of Great Depression, and this is the truth, but just your knowledge of that can set you apart from that, right? This is a perfect thing. You know what I mean? So we can see that there's no anomalies, right? When you measure the thing with your senses, it does not appear anomalous. But when you go into that polarization of mind, you can even go. This is a principle that we're showing. We're watching how God does not nullify his own self. It's rhythms and patterns to everything. But paradoxically, you can circumvent the pattern on an individual level. As Morpheus says, some rules can be bent, some can be broken completely. But even while you're breaking them, there's a paradoxical law that still says that's intact. Why? Because for someone, it's intact. For someone during 19, whatever the years were, they were experiencing this. But as that same truth, there was someone that was experiencing an immense amount of wealth. Why? Because of the polarization. And then two, which we'll pick up next episode, is because the universe is built off laws, but it's also built off uncertainty and is built off paradoxes. And it's those who can reconcile the truth of what he sees, but then cancel it out at the same time, he becomes essentially a polarized master. So yeah, man, I appreciate you guys, man. I think I got what I came for. This mastermind, as Ferdinand knows, man. When we do these, that vibration continues long after the transmission is cut, and this was the fertilizer to the seeds that I really, the universe knows that I've been wanting to dive into this, and I'll let Jared say some pieces if he has, Ferdinand say some pieces he has, but I appreciate you guys for coming back here and helping us break down, and allowing the space for me to even, voice, my words, and we could put it all into a pot so that we can continue to master, these principles, not just for cool theory, but for actual practicality when it comes to modifying the human experience in the ways that's more favorable to us as individuals. Yeah, that's the library.
Wow. Whoa. How many books?
Right now it's probably maybe 1,000 right now. Yeah, I'm not too sure.
My man's rebuilding the Library of Alexandria.
Yeah,
I've been building it for a while. But yeah, anybody who wants access to the Mastermind Library, it's right in the comments. It's in the description below the video. So you click the Mastermind Library, check these books out. Like any problem that you got, I don't care what the problem is. If you got a problem that you need to really handle somebody,
it's
boom,
in the book.
there you go. Right? If you got a problem where you need to change the way you think, there you go, right there. If you got a problem, you need to get rid of diabetes, there you go, right there. Right? If you want to learn a little bit more about magic, here goes some right here. We'll learn a little bit about Roosevelt. There you go. Right?
Russian icons.
Now one of the most valuable books in this library that I recommend everybody go in and download and use is, where's it at? Okay, I'm not far. I'm not far enough here. This one right here, The Lost Book of Herbal Remedies, on page 13. Matter of fact, since I got y'all up here, I'll just go there. That's gold. Just for that part right there. Just about every type of issue that the human body has. Tells you exactly which herbs, how they grow, where they grow, and the warnings. What the herbs produce as
go back to hair loss
benefit.
Go back to hair loss. Word. We the Cap Crusaders out this mother.
Yeah, evening primrose grows in a lot of different places in America. You know, it's a really awesome herb. And then rosemary, that's too easy to grow. You can start putting that in your food. Sage, same thing. Both of those are easy to get and grow. But yeah, I appreciate everybody who, you know, especially my man Ace Thriver. Appreciate you, homie. You know, all the love you've been given. You know, thank y'all. You know, we don't normally do Saturdays, but today was a nice change. Great conversation. Yeah, two super intelligent brothers. I want to really thank Ra for all he brings every episode, and I want to thank you, Jared, for coming through and providing the wisdom that you brought connected to your new education in the nervous system. I'm having trouble.
so much more.
Again. But you're doing some beautiful things that I appreciate because we need more brothers to have that level of understanding of the human body. That's super important. We need fathers who have that level of knowledge to the human body, you know, and then your background in sports, contact sports. Like this is super necessary. Like we need warriors in our society. Everybody out there understand we got a warrior on the line.
Yeah. I tell Ra, like when I think about like anatomy and what I understand about anatomy physiology and how they put like you know, they put words and parts of the body behind coded language called acronyms. And that's with almost every industry that they're trying to keep you out of, the financial sector, so many more. But that it came to my mind one time when I was thinking about like knowledge that is suppressed and hidden is all like words. They take away the word and just give you a letter and say, take that, figure it out. And it's kind of a slap in the face a lot of times. But yeah, me and Rob talked about how there needs to be some type of education around our body and why isn't it taught in school? And I'm trying to recant the conversation we had when we talked about like pain in the body. And because we don't know the body like we should know it, we can't remedy the pain the same way as if we knew where go for it.
And even one of the things that, you know, you showed me is that it's like the test chap, the sternum chap. So once again, we don't understand these are things that the polarized master can learn to neutralize. What if you couldn't neutralize in your body, but you realize there's a certain place you can tap or certain, and then that brings in whatever situation you're going through that's heavy, it brings it back down. Now you're already in the spiritual neutralization without using higher magic, just all lower magic. So this is why we have to just honor the body as the unconscious mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, brother. Let me just say this real quick, right? So peep this, right? You got people who have, like, let's say, hip problems as they get older, or other parts of their body. Maybe it's a knee issue, or ankle issue, or whatever. They have to have a replacement, right? Imagine if you take the human body and you make it Legos instead of carbon. So it's a human body Lego right? And that same human body with Legos operates like this human body with carbon. Okay. So it replaces itself. It completely sheds everything within 9 to 11 months every single year. Okay. From head to toe.
And at the end of 7 years.
All of it. What you say?
And at the end of 7 years.
At the end of 7 years, excuse me.
No. But I'm saying that you might be right, but I'm saying at the end of 7 years, you're completely a new being.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So let's say that the Lego being still the same thing, right? Mm-hmm. Well, if you don't replace with Legos, you're gonna probably have a problem if you put graham crackers in there. The graham crackers is probably gonna work for a short period of time. But if you accidentally have some hairspray get on them, or somebody spills some juice on it, right? Next thing you know, the graham crackers start crushing a little bit. They just break a little bit at a time, not complete breaks unless, they fell down and it's like, that's a real break. Yeah. I don't even want to say it like that. I think that people need to really look at their bodies this way. They need to use this analogy. Like, if I don't use Legos to replace what's going on in here, since I'm replacing every single year all of me,
and I want the material to be youthful and the same or origin of what it was.
Exactly. So we're talking about minerals. Yeah. Please understand, people, that even though protein, carbohydrates, and fats is important, what we're really talking about is minerals: iron, copper, zinc, phosphate, and calcium, and the list goes on. Gold. You got all of this inside of you. Lead, you got it inside of you, right? You might got a small amount of certain minerals, but they're needed. All of them are needed in balance, and they need to be replenished. And in this space, you might not necessarily achieve purity, but you're gonna achieve a higher vibration. Almost automatically, you're gonna have a boost in your energy and all that. I mean, I can go further and further down.
Yeah. I can feel it.
Yeah. And these are all the things that once we understand the human experience is valid within itself, then we're free to have a more purer experience. You know what I'm saying? Because it doesn't have to, we don't have to judge it, but we could just look. When I do X, Y, and Z, it leads to this, which you say is less harmonious. You know what I mean? All right, well, that I can polarize myself. Now let me do X, Y, and Z. This feels more advantageous to the human experience. You know what I mean? So it just makes it clear that we're not trying to say right or wrong. We're just trying to say, and spread the good spell, because we understand certain people are caught in their own cycles unless they hear enough. Their pendulum is just hitting them in their ass, and the way their life is structured, it doesn't introduce any new information. So they need to hear the good spell, and people like us need to go out and say things, because we are the seeds that allows them to be aware of another awareness, which then allows them to polarize themselves towards their experience, and where they say, oh, wasn't that we were right? It just so happened for your vessel. Some people like the chaos. They thrive under it. But most of us, I dare say, when we're usually under a different system, we are the ones who claim it as good or better or more preferred. You know what I mean? So that's all that we're saying, is that there is a certain pattern which you guys classify as high, and it follows a certain order. Usually, typically, when you reach people that reach a certain level of understanding, they just so happen to eat a certain way. They just so happen to care about fructose and high fructose. They just so happen to care about what type of water goes on their skin. It just so happens now, you know what I mean? We're not saying that you can't reach, but there's patterns. So let's make it easier for ourselves to go with the flow of nature, as Ferdinand is saying. We're not preaching you out of judgment. We're just preaching out of love and caring, and say this tends to be a more harmonious experience when you put minerals and certain things into your body. You know what I'm saying? Which then he's telling you the 8 to 9 time frame, and then the 7-year time frames, because remember, the body is taking what you give it and reproducing itself. If you're depressed and all these things, but you can look at your diet for the past 7 years and say that I've been eating foods that correlate with my experience, then you understand what Ferdinand is saying. It's not just about thought. Sometimes it could just be your lower physical self. You could be so-called doing pure things in the mind, but you're still being conflicted because your lower experience is putting these certain chemicals that then thus creates adverse reactions in your body. You know, so it could be simply that simple, where you could be someone that is doing the so-called right things, but you're disregarding the body and you're not understanding the body's.
This is real alchemy, everybody. Like, understand that this is real alchemy. These chemicals that are coming inside of the body through eating, through washing, through moisturizing, through all kinds of different ways, through gelling the hair and all of this, right? They're coming into the body, and understand that they have different types of reactions to different temperatures. Understand that when a person is highly emotional, they usually start getting hot. Listen, we can go deep.
That's next though. Next episode.
Be blessed.
2 episodes from now.
Y'all be blessed. I'm gonna go ahead and get up out of here. Rod, you be blessed. Jared, you be blessed. I hope to talk to you again soon, homie. And expose your gift.
Yes.